Okay, 1 o'clock. I'd like to welcome everybody here today. This is our week 2. Today our candidate is Miss Christy Hall. We'll follow the same format we did last week with the first candidate. And make sure when you come in, we did this last week, and some may be here that wasn't here last week. There's a survey that was handed out to you when you came in the door. Make sure before you leave to fill out that survey and put it in the appropriate place back here at the back as you go out the door. So what we're going to do here today, the candidate in our rules will give 10 minutes to give an introduction of themselves if it need to be, and then we'll have 50 minutes of questions from the principals and assistant principals and whomever that would want to speak. So with saying that, Ms. Christie, we'll turn it over to you for the introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Thank you for being here today and showing an interest in the Director of Schools position. I am both humbled and honored to be considered for this position. My name is Christy Hall, and I am the Federal Programs Director of the school system. I have grown up in the school system, attending Grimsley Elementary and graduating from Clark Range High School. After graduating from high school, I attended Tennessee Tech University for my undergraduate degree and later pursued both my master's and educational specialist degrees. Prior to starting my teaching career, I did my student teaching at Pine Haven Elementary and substituted in both Cumberland and Fentress counties. I started my teaching career at Clark Range Elementary as a 5th and 6th grade teachers, and I remained there until the new school opened at South Fentress Elementary. I taught for 7 years before being transferred into my current position that I've served in for the past 14 years. In 2016, I was nominated and selected by my peers to be the Upper Cumberland Supervisor of the Year. During my teaching years, I became a volunteer 4-H horse leader for the county. I worked with students across the county in horse bow, hippology, horse judging, and shows. I fundraised and had a highly competitive team and took them to competitions across the state and even to Louisiana, where they excelled. I also became the cheerleading sponsor for the high school cheerleading squad, and what an experience that was. I had little to no experience at all with cheerleading as I had played basketball in high school. But again, I was able to learn and adapt quickly to be able to support my squad. Again, I fundraised, took my cheerleaders to camp, purchased new uniforms, and had a very active pep club. I invested in this community and this county as my husband has owned and operated a tire store for 30 years. I have 2 daughters, one of which is a first-year resident doctor at Erlanger Hospital in Chattanooga, and the other one has just started pre-K at South Fentress. I would like to tell you a little bit about why I do what I do every day. As I said previously, I have 2 daughters with quite an age span between them. My oldest daughter was a very bright and gifted student. However, when she left and went to college, she came home one weekend, and she was distraught. She was overwhelmed. She basically said, "I can't do this. I'm not smart enough." Let me back up and say that she has great pride in both her high school and elementary education. She loved her teachers and had wonderful teachers that she holds in high regards even today. But although she loved her schooling and her teachers, she was unprepared for the demands of college, both academically, mentally, and through her educational experiences. As a parent, I was able to, with my knowledge of education, be able to support her, encourage her, and help her find the resources and supports that college offered so that she could be successful. But as an administrator, I reflected strongly on this, and I thought about the students that went to school with her, that had visited our home, that I had coached, that I had taught, and I thought about how were they going to be successful? Who was going to encourage, motivate, and support them? Who was going to cheer and be their champion? As the director of schools, I will make decisions based on what is best for students. I will be their advocate. I will be their champion. I will consider the voices of the teachers and faculty and staff that my decisions impact. I will be accountable and transparent in my decisions. I will be professional every single day in my interactions with others. And as you can tell from my why and my experiences as a teacher, a youth leader, a coach, and an administrator. I will support, encourage, motivate, and inspire students, teachers, and staff to help move our system forward.
And following the last session we had, the last candidate we had, we'll start over here at the left of the room and go to the right. We'll do it just the same way we did before, okay?
Okay, Miss Christy, I know you realize I'm the principal at York Elementary, but for anyone listening, I'm Kylee Young and from York Elementary. And I'm going to stick with the same question I asked last week. As you know very well, we have lost several teachers, especially to some of our surrounding counties. So as far as teacher retention, what's some ideas that you might have to keep our good teachers at home?
Thank you, Ms. Kylee. And one thing that I would like to note on this, not only have we lost some teachers to surrounding counties for multiple reasons, they have also shined and been able to advance their career in leadership roles within those systems. So I'm very proud of those educators. I think they go out to other systems very well trained. I think within our system, we really need to look at our customer service experience. What do we offer to not only students, but staff and all teachers? You know, how is our information accessed from teachers? Are we easily accessed on the internet, or more importantly, on our smartphones and devices, because that's most of the way that people reach out and try to see us. I also would like to know, what is our customer relations as far as how does the public perceive us? What benefits, competitive wages do we have to offer to attract and hold teachers in our system? I think that we have to improve our working conditions and our morale and support our teachers and staff every day so that we have teachers that want to stay and educate our students in our county.
I'm Ashley Bilbrey, Vice Principal of York Elementary. My question is, what do you believe is the greatest challenge facing Fentress County schools at this time, and how do you plan to address this challenge?
I think we have multiple challenges, and I appreciate the question, Miss Ashley. One of the questions as people were filtering into the room that we were discussing is teacher shortage. I think this problem is not just here, but across the state, across the nation. And living in a rural area, we have to be, as I said earlier, competitive. And so that is a huge challenge. I think one of the things that we can do to help that problem is to really look at our hiring process and when we hire. Typically, we sometimes set teachers up for failure when we were late in the game in hiring them. They've not had the ample training they need and support, and we throw them out to a classroom on their, sometimes even after the first day of school. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges right now our system faces. It's not the only challenge by far. I mean, virtual education and the pandemic are huge challenges as well, but I think that would be one that we should address and do it in a timely fashion.
William Bilbrey, Vice Principal, Pine Haven Elementary. I'm going to jump back. I can't really ask my question because you live in Fentress County and you've stated why you want to become the director of schools. So what expectations do you have for principals and assistant principals? I know there's been a lot of discussion of walkthroughs and other things, but what's the expectations you have for principals and assistant principals?
With principals and assistant principals, I do believe they are the instructional leaders in their building. I think we have to build their capacity and trust them to make the right decisions and to run their schools accordingly. I know one of the biggest challenges sometimes that principals bring to me is the walkthroughs. In our system, we do have an expectation that principals are in the classroom 2 hours per day or 10 hours a week. But I think we also have to acknowledge that there are competing priorities during your day. For instance, this week, most of you have an RTI meeting that will take your entire day. You have also a consultant that you will be shadowing that will take your entire day. You had to leave early today for interviews, and we are glad that you did that. You also have Homeland Security coming that will take you out for half of a day. So we realize that during this week, this 5-day week, 3 of those days, your priorities are elsewhere. So we have to adjust accordingly and realize that you can't meet that expectation on those days. With that being said, I think we owe our teachers and students the opportunity for us to be in their classroom and not wait till an evaluation type situation, that we are able to be there, assist, and support them and know what instruction is going on in our buildings. Thank you.
Thanks.
Ms. Christie, Ernest Campbell, principal at Allard. What is your plan to engage family and communities into our school system?
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. We know that a parent is a child's first teacher. And typically, as a young child starts school, then you have a lot of parent involvement and parent engagement. They're excited. We take the first day of school pictures, all those sorts of things. But as the child grows and gets higher in the grade level, that parent involvement kind of tapers off. So we need to engage parents. We need to meet them in ways that, or avenues that they're used to getting communication. You know, if they're not used to the newspaper, and a lot of times people don't read the newspaper, what type of social media are we using? And I think we've tried to promote that this year. I would like to see our schools not only invite parents and try to disseminate information to them, but to truly engage them. I would love to see the math nights, the ELA nights, where we bring in parents and we teach them how to interact with their children over certain standards, and the parents actually leave with something they can take home and practice with the child. I would love to see family movie nights at the schools and just engage our parents. It's a wonderful experience when you come to the Fall Festival and you see the parents and the kids there and they're excited to be there. If we can get our parent support, I think that we're halfway to our student ownership of their education.
Thank you.
Ms. Christy, Tammy Norman, Assistant Principal at Allard Elementary. Currently, we have a basic academic framework for our county in math and reading intervention. What are your plans to possibly, since each school has their own dynamic of student, what do you think about our plans to differentiate our basic framework just like we want our teachers to differentiate for their students?
Thank you, Ms. Tammy. Each school has its own identity and its own dynamics. I think you can tell this when you walk in the school, that each school basically has their own personality. And if we look across our schools in our system, I would say that York Elementary has some very different needs and successes than Allard Elementary School does. And so I think we have to, as teachers, differentiate those supports within our RTI model. We also have to provide the needed resources that each school needs to be successful. When we consider the two schools that I gave an example of, Allard Elementary might not have as much of a need as far as remediation and students in their Tier 3, but on the other hand, York Elementary might need additional support and help.
Sherry York, Pine Haven, principal at Pine Haven. Ms. Christie, this is going to deal with supporting the building level administrators. Take some time and just talk about, sometimes we make hard decisions. Parents are not always happy with us. When an upset parent reaches out to you, how will you handle a situation concerning a decision that we've made at a building level?
Thank you, Ms. Cherry. What I would say to that is, principals and assistant principals, you are captaining your ship. Whatever decision you make, regardless of whether I think it is right or wrong at the time, I will always support you and uphold you within the public. We might have a conversation later behind closed doors that I disagree with, but I will support you through those decisions so that we can work together to solve those problems. And sometimes, as you said, decisions aren't popular. And sometimes we have to say no to something, and sometimes no is our best yes. You know, as a parent, a lot of times our kids want something, and we have to say no because we know better. So I know that's difficult, but I would be there to support you in your decisions and to back you up.
Missy Adkins, Assistant Principal, South Interest Elementary. Ms. Christie, my question is kind of a two-part question. It goes right along with Ms. Sherry. What strategies have you used in the past to manage confrontation, whether it be with parents, community members, teachers, administrators? etc.? And if you'll answer that, then I'll ask the other part.
First of all, in a small rural system, who's ever at the office at the time gets the phone calls from the irate parents or the upset person. So I think we've all had our share of dealing with those situations. I think the main thing is that whether it's a parent, an upset teacher, a student, that individual wants to be heard. They want to be valued in what they're saying, and for you to have the time and compassion to deal with their situation. And in most cases, it can be easily resolved. In most cases, both sides are sometimes right. So in dealing with them, I think you treat them respectful, you treat them professional, and you talk to them and treat them the way you want to be treated.
And the second part of that, being an effective leader sometimes involves making those hard decisions. Are you willing to make those hard decisions and stand behind your decisions? And explain that, please.
Okay. I have had to make several hard decisions throughout the course of my job career. One of the most difficult decisions that I'll hopefully talk about later with the school board is the reading initiative. And again, there was a lot of decisions that were made that were unpopular, especially with teachers, and that was very, very difficult. And I stood on the ground that I put students first, and sometimes that was very hard for changing things that teachers had been done. It was also very hard because we had some outstanding teachers that were doing some great things. But overall, to change the system, we had to address all of it. So yes, I'm able to make those hard decisions. There's also a very fine line, and I want to be sure I say this. I will stand behind those decisions if they are in the best interest of the student. But I will also reflect on those changes and those decisions to make sure they're the right ones. I will listen to teacher input and value what they say. I know recently I made a very difficult decision. Again, that was not popular, and even to the point of applying for this position, it would probably have been easier to make a different decision, but I did not. But I did go back and meet with teachers, and due to the lack of supports that we were able to put in place, I did make some changes for 2 of our schools based on their individual needs. And I'm still talking with one school and haven't been to your school yet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Christy Walker, principal at South Fentress. My question is, and you've touched on this a little bit, what would be one of your goals to move Fentress County schools into a positive direction?
Thank you, Ms. Christie. One of my goals for moving the system in a positive direction is, as I look around this room and the people sitting in the chairs beside of me, you each have strengths that are very valuable to our system. Our employees, some of which are sitting in the stands today, also are very valuable to our system. So I think we need to do some team building and unite each person together so that we can more effectively educate our students and keep our teacher morale up.
Gina Buckner, Elementary Curriculum Supervisor. Ms. Christie, how will you evaluate the programs and practices that are currently in place to determine their effectiveness and status moving forward?
Thank you, Ms. Gina. There's a couple different ways that I would evaluate the current practices that we have in place and the programs. One of the first ways that I would do that is by bringing in our group, the group that I'm sitting here with, and really looking at what other programs we're doing. Are we just doing them because we've been doing them for 30 years? Or are we getting our return on the investment? We're putting money into this, and is it really being effective? Is it needed, or are we doing this plus something else that's yielding the same results? So I think we have to go back to the drawing board. I think we have to take into account student data with that, but sometimes data doesn't give us everything we need to know.
Thank you. I also have a question for Ms. Sandy can answer. She is a pre-K and SPED supervisor, and she was unable to be here in person. But her question is, or statement is, tell me a little bit about your leadership style and the expectation of the district leaders that will be in place working under you.
I think I've already hinted on this, but I appreciate the question. My leadership style is different than the current administration. I have more of a shared leadership style where collectively I think that each person within our group has good qualities and good strengths, and a lot of times those are strengths that are my weaknesses. And so I think when you put those, when you put those together, we're able to be a more effective team.
Thank you.
Ms. Christie, I'm Tina Smith, Language Arts RTI Coordinator. How will you communicate expectations to school faculty and staff and give them a voice?
Thank you, Ms. Tina. There's, again, a couple of ways that I would communicate with schools, with principals, with teachers and staff. First and foremost, I want to be in schools. I want to be in our office, but I want to be in schools so that people have easy access to me. I also want to communicate my expectations through clear written expectations to each person and to each stakeholder group. Again, going back to being in the schools, I think when we're in the schools and we see what's going on, we can also provide opportunities for students and teachers and staff to give us feedback.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'll do follow-up questions. We'll start over here at the left again. If you have another question.
Okay, Miss Christie, just same question from last week about corporal punishment. What are your thoughts, and do you think it needs to be used in our district?
With corporal punishment, I think in the past that it has been very, successful to some extent. But I also believe that we're in a new day and time. At this time, we still do have corporal punishment on the books, and it must be very well documented. We must have parent consent before we do that. And so as far as opposing it, I'm not necessarily opposed, but I think we have to evaluate whether or not it's being effective. If it's not being effective, I think we need to look at other forms of punishment, whether we search out in-school suspension or other avenues rather than just corporal punishment.
This goes back to the same question, too, with a little adjustment, but our bus duty coordinator makes more than assistant principals currently. But not only our assistant principals, our assistants that we're losing, due to being able to get a higher paid job within the school system. How do you plan to address that, whether it be pay scale or retention of those employees?
Thank you, Ms. Ashley. And first of all, I do disagree that bus duty coordinators make more than our assistant principals. Assistant principals, just like principals, put in a tremendous amount of time at the school. I know they're there early, they stay late, they're there for all events. Currently, I believe our assistant principals, and I may not be exactly correct, but I think it's a $1,600 or $1,700 stipend, whereas bus duty coordinators can make up to $15 per day, and for the year, if they work every day, it's $2,600. So what I would say to that is I think that needs to be evaluated. I know that the bus duty coordinator position is in the MOU, so that would have to go before collaborative conferencing. However, the pay for the assistant principal position is not within collaborative conferencing, and I know that our school board and board chair has set a committee to study compensation. If elected superintendent, I would like to be a part of that committee. I previously worked with the insurance committee, and although I didn't come up with the solution, I was a valuable team member on that and helped bring forth the information needed so that we could come up with ideals. So I think that truly needs to be looked at, and I would love to be a part of that committee that's given the opportunity to study that.
On the topic of PD, currently, of course, we have a sub shortage, and it's very, very hard to get the classes covered when we do have a PD day or training for math teachers, ELA teachers, whatever, during the day. What's your thoughts on trying to fix that? Maybe more PD in the summer, or taking a half a day off, or a full day built into the calendar where the teachers come to school, students don't. Anyway, how do you address that?
One of the ways that we can address it, or actually in multiple ways, the last few years our PD has pretty much been tied up in the state required PD, especially for the elementary teachers, more so than the middle school or high school teachers. When we think of our elementary school teachers, I think we can look at it a variety of ways. We did a few years ago try to do an early release, and let teachers out or let students out and keep teachers for training. Some issues we ran into that was that the way we build in snow days, teachers were already working basically their snow time, so it was like double dipping. I love that ideal. I would like to pursue that ideal, but I think we need team members to discuss how we can do it effectively without overworking, per se, the teachers. I do believe we can develop our calendar where we can have more days throughout the year. We do have a limitation that there is only 3 days per year that we can do half days built into the calendar, and currently we use those for registration day, York Institute's homecoming, and the last day of school. So we would have to analyze that. Again, I like the ideal of pulling teachers out, but with a teacher shortage or a substitute shortage, it's not very effective, and we put more stress on the teacher trying to prepare for their day out and losing invaluable instruction time with students that in some cases are already behind.
Thank you.
Ms. Christie, what role have you played in developing a budget?
Mr. Campbell, I've had extensive opportunities this year to develop budgets. With the ESSER funds, currently our ESSER budget and federal programs budget almost matches the regular GP budget. So we basically went from having a little over a million and something in federal programs, if you combine all the titles, to about 11 million with ESSER funds. So a lot of the responsibility and job duties that I perform are developing budgets within the allowability guides of how we can spend those budgets. So again, I've had extensive training the last 14 years on developing budgets.
Thank you.
Ms. Christie, if you were to evaluate your current job or our current district, what part of that do you think is the most difficult that you deal with or that our district deals with on a daily basis?
Ms. Tammy, are you asking what challenge the district deals with?
Yes, I guess you could put it that way.
Okay. Again, I think we've had a multitude. I think the pandemic has been something that we have never saw before. But truly, right now in this time, I think it is teacher shortages and the hiring of teachers and retaining teachers in our system. I think, when we do not provide teachers for students, we are going backwards. When we're just filling a position to be filling it, I would rather us be able to pick from the cream of the crop and to be able to get and keep teachers that we want in our system.
Talk to me just a little bit about zoning. What are your thoughts on zoning?
Sometimes there's not a lot of advantages of living in a rural area, Miss Sherry, but I will say that living in a small area and zoning is probably one of our advantages. We have a very loose policy on zoning that basically you go to school where you're at. However, we have been very accommodating with parents that if they have a need to go to another school and are able to transport their children if we don't have a bus, that we allow them to do that. I do realize that if we had a mass exodus of students from one school, that we might need to consider that, but we also might need to look internally at our practices and what's going on at the school. At this time, I don't see any need to do any more rigorous structures as far as zoning.
Ms. Christie, what are your thoughts on looking at the different personalities, the strengths and weaknesses of your current administrators and teachers, and the possible movement of them to different schools in different positions?
Okay. So I'm going to start with the administrators. Again, I think the administrators, and I'm going to talk about the central office level and then school level, teacher level. At the central office level, I think our team has to be composed of, again, varieties of strengths that are able to work together for a common goal. At the school level, I will say that each of our schools reflects and takes on the personality of our administrators and principals and assistant principals. To say that we have never heard the ideal of moving our principals, tossing things up and moving our principals, would be wrong because I've heard that ideal. But again, I think the school takes on the personality of the principal and assistant principal. And I also believe that principals and assistant principals are a lot of parents' connection to the school and that you hold a place of value. So I don't see a need to move principals and assistant principals. Within your school building, I think that, again, is your role as a principal or assistant principal to consider the personalities of your staff as you're placing the grade level teachers.
Ms. Christie, the state has rolled out several initiatives and mandates, such as summer school and the tutoring program that will go into effect for us next year in an attempt to close the learning loss from COVID. Having been part of the summer camp last year, part of the planning, the implementation, you helped us a great deal, and we learned a lot in the process. So moving forward, what would be your goals for the summer school and for the tutoring program?
Thank you, Ms. Gina. Moving forward, I think some of the biggest challenges we had with summer school was just in preparing for summer school, being able to identify how many students would actually come, how many teachers we would need. Fortunately, we had a lot of teachers apply, but we still needed additional teachers. And also, we had to be creative in working with teachers so that some teachers worked 2 weeks and some teachers worked 4 weeks, and finding people to cover. So moving forward, I would like a better way for us to be able to plan and project how many students would come, because we also know that we had a certain number enroll and not a certain number that showed up. So I would like for us to be able to do that early. I do think now that we have a year behind us with that summer school option, that more people are aware of it and know about it. And I think that students enjoyed it. There was a lot of positive talk about that outside in the public, so I think we'll have more students interested. I've also heard some good feedback from teachers that they felt like it was effective. As far as Tennessee Tutor in All Corps is concerned, it is coming. It is something that we are using ESSER funds for, as well as getting additional state grant for. My concern for that is being able to have the teachers and the staff to be able to do that. But I think it's very valuable and worthwhile, especially if we could have certified teachers in those positions that's working with small groups. I think it would very much complement our RTI program, as those students would be working on standards, kind of our bubble kids, of moving them to the next level.
Thank you.
Ms. Christie, this is a question from Ms. Sandy Canancer, who could not be in attendance today. Tell us how the overall picture fits in with your goals concerning the special population students.
I will say, Ms. Tina, that when I was in college, I had one particular teacher that really stood out, and what she said to me is, you will have special education students in your classroom. I think she said that to us daily. Special education students are still our students, and I think we celebrate them and their diversity. I also think that for instance, at York Elementary, I think we have 26 or 7 CDC students that are interacting in the regular classrooms daily. I think every child has a right to education, and so I don't want any child's rights infringed upon. Again, they're all our students.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes this tract. We'll be back at 2 p.m. for the community leaders. Thank you all very much. Okay, welcome back, everyone. It's 2 o'clock, and this block here is community leaders. And I want to say a couple of things. Number one is you all have got a survey that you obtained whenever you came into the room. Please fill that out and drop it in the box on your way out. And the second thing is our next block at 3:15 and lasts till 4:30 is faculty and staff. And I understand that some teachers will not be able to make it here at 3:15, but if you come in at 3:30 or 3:45, rest assured I will let you speak, okay? So don't let that hinder you, because we got until 4:30, so you need to come in if you have a question and ask it to Miss Christie. Our candidate today is Miss Christy Hall. I'm going to let her give her introduction, and then I'm going to let a young lady speak that's sitting on the front row here. Her name is Miss Maggie Stevens. I'm going to let her come up and ask a question, if that's okay with everyone, to get it started off, okay? So I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Christie.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Thank you for being here today and showing interest in the Director of Schools position. I am both humbled and honored to be interviewing for this position. My name is Christy Hall, and I'm the current Federal Programs Director for the Fentress County School System. I have grown up in this school system, attending Grimsley Elementary and graduating from Clark Range High School. I attended Tennessee Technological University for my undergraduate degree and later pursued both my master's and educational specialist degrees there. Prior to being hired as a teacher, I did my student teaching at Pine Haven Elementary and was a substitute in both Cumberland and Fentress counties. I started my teaching career at Clark Range Elementary as both a 5th and 6th grade teacher, where I stayed until South Fentress Elementary School was built and I moved to the new building. After 7 years teaching, I was transferred into the position that I currently hold, and I have served there for the past 14 years. In 2016, I was nominated and selected by my peers in the Upper Cumberland to be the Upper Cumberland Supervisor of the Year. During my teaching years, I became a volunteer 4-H horse leader for the county. I worked with students across the county for horse bowl, hippology, horse judging, and showing events. I fundraised, had a highly competitive group, and took them to competitions across the state and even to Louisiana, where they excelled. I also became the high school cheerleading sponsor, and believe me, I didn't have any experience as a cheerleading coach, but I was able to learn and adapt so that I was able to support them. Again, I fundraised to purchase uniforms, pay for camp, and other needed supplies. I traveled with the squad to competition, to games, and had a very active pep squad. I invested in this county and community as my husband owns and operates a tire store for the last 30 years. We have 2 daughters. One is a first-year resident doctor at Erlanger Hospital in Chattanooga, and the youngest has just started pre-K at South Fentress Elementary School. I would like to tell you a little bit about why I do what I do every day. As I previously said, I have 2 daughters with quite an age difference between them. When my oldest daughter went to school, she was a very bright student. She was even classified as gifted. When she went to college, she had been in college for a little over 4 or 5 weeks, and she came home one weekend. When she came home, she was distraught. She was overwhelmed. She was crying and in tears and saying, "I just can't do it. I'm not smart enough." Let me back up and say that she loved her high school and elementary education. She loved her teachers and had wonderful teachers that she holds in high regards even today. As a parent and as an educator, I was able to support her, encourage her, and help her find the supports that college offered to be successful. I thought a lot about the situation as an administrator. I thought about the students that she had grown up with, that had visited our home, that I have taught, that I had coached. And I wondered, how were they going to be successful? Who was going to support them accomplish their goals? Who was going to cheer for and encourage them? As the director of schools, I will make decisions based on what is best for students. I will be their advocate. I will be their champion. I will consider the voices of the teacher, faculty, and staff with whom my decisions impact. I will be transparent and accountable. I will be professional every single day in my interactions with others. And as you can tell from my why and my experience as a teacher, a youth leader, a coach, and an administrator, I will support, encourage, motivate, and inspire students, teachers, and staff every day to help move our system forward. Maggie?
Thank you very much, Ms. Maggie.
How do you feel about whole class punishment?
Thank you, Maggie. That's a wonderful question. As a teacher, I would be guilty if I said that I never did whole class punishment. But at the same time, I'm not an advocate of it. When you punish the whole class, there are a lot of students that have did nothing wrong. So whole class punishment for me is not something that I support, even though I've been guilty of that in the past.
Brave young lady. Thank you, Maggie. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll start at the left of the room, and please state your name as we go around, and then once we do the first line of questions, then we'll do a follow-up question.
Tyler Arms, I'm the Fentress County Finance Director, and I'll just go off the same questions that I asked last week. But so, what are some ideas that you have and some things that you would like to see for in lines of community involvement to be involved within the community?
First of all, I think our schools are community hubs, Mr. Arms. I think that our schools embrace the communities in which they are, and I would like to see community involvement and parent involvement increased in those schools. I want schools to be places that students, parents, and staff want to be at. I want to see family movie nights where parents can come out with their family and watch movies on the playgrounds of the schools. Also, I would like for our student or our parents, to be engaged in activities where they can come out for math nights, ELA nights, and learn how to interact with their students as far as growing educationally.
Ms. Christie, my name's Michael Beatty, and first off, I'd like to thank you for your service to the county Board of Education and for showing interest in this position. I have a question involving some community outreach as well. I feel like there's a low number of students that are involved with our after-school programs, whether that be in the school or out. But what would you bring to the table, and what kind of ideas would you have to promote this in the community? Promote it through, with parents and students, and how would you support it?
Thank you, Mr. Beatty. First of all, as I said earlier in the previous session, I think we really have to look at our customer service and public relations as the school system. We truly do have a product to sell. Whether you are a teacher or a student, we want you in our system, and we want you to see things in our system that attracts you to our system. You asked specifically about the after-school program. Currently, we do have a 21st century after-school program that follows certain guidelines, but I think we need to rethink how we do business. If a student is rewarded at school, as they sometimes are with popcorn and Coke, that is something that most of our students have access to when they go home. So how can we change that in a way that motivates and encourages those kids to want to be there? How can we engage them in diverse learning opportunities that will promote them to want to come and be at school?
Good afternoon, Ms. Christie. I'm Jacob Rosenbaum with the Fentress County Chamber, and I'd like to second what Mr. Beatty said. Thank you for your years of service in the school system already. It's teachers like you that build these communities that we live in. The need for skilled workers continues to increase with each passing year, and employers in our community are consistently in need of employees with experience in skilled trades. Can you commit to working with regional post-secondary institutions to provide greater vocational opportunities to the students of Fentress County?
Yes, I would definitely like to support that endeavor. I know that a lot of our students don't go straight into college. A lot of them are seeking out some specific skill or trade and can actually go in and make rather good wages for themselves in those skills and trade. I know that the County Commission has also been pursuing and looking for ways to have more offerings for students in skills and trade, and I would love to have the opportunity to work to build that opportunity and that capacity within our system. I think there's a lot of areas that we could build on, whether looking at our economic data, whether it be meat processing, welding, nursing, cosmetology. So a lot of avenues that we could explore and bring offerings to students and the community.
Thank you for coming today, Christy. My name's Billy Jennings, funeral director. For the students themselves, what can you bring to the table that can help them academically other than just being in office?
Well, Mr. Jennings, one thing I'd like to do, again, is to set some high expectations, to set some common goals that all of our teachers and faculty can work to. But also, I think students need educational opportunities. And when I talk about educational opportunities, I also talk about we live in a rural area. And sometimes that limits the exposure that student has. And I'm going to borrow from Clint Satterfield, a director in Trousdale County. And one thing he says is we may be small and rural, but we don't have to be backwoods. We can have opportunities for kids. I would like to see soccer fields full of kids, football fields. I know when I'm commuting to other systems or other counties, we see that. And we know those opportunities increase the students' ability to even be motivated to come to school and want to be at school, and also their ability to focus. I think that all students aren't just interested in sports, so we need to have some other learning opportunities with STEM activities, music and chorus and band, multiple offerings for our students. So again, I think we need to diversify and add offerings that students have some choice and selection in, and that attract students to those areas.
Thank you.
Bryant Johnson, Union Bank. Once again, as everybody else said, thank you, Christy, for your interest in this position and wanting to do better for the county, and also your service to the county as well. I'll kind of go along the last thing I asked last week too is, you know, we've gone through an unprecedented time with the COVID-19. We've seen, I think, you know, many of our students are falling behind. I know we've done a lot of things to try to help that, but what's some things you think that you could bring to the table, or some ideas that you have that would help, you know, help get these children caught up, I guess?
I think one thing that the pandemic has shown us is the importance of education and for students being in schools face-to-face. I think there has been a newfound gratitude toward teachers and the profession for the jobs that they do every day. I also think during this pandemic that our teachers have shown they have gone above and beyond. Every day they have been tasked with jobs that's outside of their teaching realms. They have had to take temperatures, sanitize doorknobs. Also, the resiliency of teachers to be able to teach both virtually and in class. They're really performing two jobs, and it really put our teachers at a vulnerable position. So one of the things that I would like to do is to really bring my stakeholders together, to set up committees to be able to discuss ways that we can improve and help students learning. One thing we know we need is for students to be at school. So we have some things coming down the road, whether it's Tennessee all-core tutoring. We also have summer school opportunities now for students. So we need to connect those dots and provide a well-rounded education. One thing I'll also say, we don't and should not ever expect a single teacher to catch a student up when they're several years behind. What we should expect of our teachers is to get a year's worth of growth and then maybe a little bit extra. And that, when we all work together as a system, we can truly catch kids up.
Ms. Christie, again, thank you so much. We have quality people applying for this position, and that's what is needed. I'm Kevin Baz, WDEB Radio. Mr. Jacob over there almost took my question, but I will do an extension of what he was talking about, because I was really interested in vocational technical education, and especially it's so important in a rural community. When Governor Lee took office, one of his first priorities, he toured the state and really pushed vocational, TCAT, vocational education in the county. The current administration has really pushed that to the point of planning for a building to be here. I know that there are some concerns among teachers and parents that this would be an institute for both adults and students. Some concern has been expressed that they not so sure how mixing an adult population with a student population in one school would be a good thing. But how would you address that? And how would you further support us getting a technical institute here in the county?
Thank you, Mr. Baz. Well, CTE is a very important program as well as the trades that students are going to be invested in. I do realize there are concerns with mixing both students and adults. And I think we could phase that in slowly, where we have courses that are just for students, and then bring on afternoon classes that might mix the two groups. I do think it is doable, as other systems, Huntsville and Oneida, also allow adults to intermingle with their students. But I think we have to have some strict guidelines and to oversee that closely. I would also work with our school system and our county commission to be able to move that forward in the system and to provide the opportunities needed to help train a workforce for our economy.
Miss Christie, I'm Lee Little. I'm currently employed by Huntsville Tennessee College of Applied Technology. And through the years, I've noticed that leadership styles have everything to do with the effectiveness of any program. How is your leadership style different from the current administration?
I think my leadership style is very much different from current administration. I think I am more of a visionary leader that has shared leadership characteristics. I see the strengths in the people around me, and I think those strengths complement my weaknesses. So I think I can build capacity of others by building a team that is committed to the same goal. If you think about any national sports team or any team that has won championships, it took every single person on the team. It took the people that never stepped foot on the court or the field. And so I will recognize and value the importance of every single person on our staff, whether you are the bus driver, the first person that sees our children of a morning, and the last person that sees them in the evening, or if you're the janitors cleaning the toilets. You have a very important role. So my leadership style is one of professionalism, shared leadership, and visionary.
Ms. Christie, I'm Julie Matthews, 5th District Commissioner. As a county commissioner, you know, the budgeting process is a lot of what we do. Do you have any experience in making a budget for a school system? And how important is it to you to provide a line-by-line budget proposal to the county commission each year that's in compliance with state laws and guidelines so as to give an accurate and transparent accounting of all school system monies so that Fentress Countyans can clearly see how their tax dollars are being spent?
First of all, I do have some vast knowledge in developing the budgets, the federal budgets. One thing with federal budgets is that we have to make sure that we are supplementing, not supplanting. We also have specific guidelines that we have to abide by in developing those budgets. And this year, with all the CARES Act, ESSER money, we have seen an influx of federal funds into the system. And in saying that we've seen an influx, it's more than 10 times what we're normally used to in the capacity that I serve. The budget that we have set up this year for the ESSER budgets basically had every single line item that a GP budget had when we started into bonuses for payroll and that those different areas. So one thing that I would want you to know is that I'm dedicated to working with not just County Commission, but our finance director in developing a budget. I'm also very willing to listen to schools. I would like the opportunity to go to the schools twice a year just to see their facility needs and also their human capacity. I also have a form that I will give to the school board members tonight that I have developed for that reason, where we can prioritize those needs and be able to look at the budget that we have, the recurrent expenses that we have, and to spend within our means, but also to do it in a way that all students benefit from those expenses.
Thank you.
All right. My name is Jeannie Dixon, Federal Programs Bookkeeper for the Fentress County School System. I have a question for you, Ms. Christie. Would you clarify for us perhaps your top 3 strengths that you possess that you think would help you to be successful in the role as Director of Schools if offered the position?
Thank you, Ms. Jenny. You know, sometimes I think that others see your strengths more clearly than you do. And so in saying that, I would say that the top 3 strengths that others have told me that are my strengths is that, 1, I'm a visionary leader. Also, that I am very professional in all my interactions with people. I treat people how they would like to be treated and how I would like to be treated. Additionally, I'm very good at dealing with different personalities. I truly am a people person. I like to please people, and I like to make people happy, and I want them to know that they are valued.
Thank you, Ms. Hall.
All right. Follow-up question.
Actually, I have two. One that I'd like to expound kind of on what Julie was talking about on budgeting. You went into going to the schools and consulting. So, how do you feel about consulting with your different department heads to come up with things such as maybe a 5-year plan or something along those lines? Do you have any ideas on that?
I do. I think it's very much needed. And I think I've talked to some of my other colleagues about this, that as we're developing the budget, once we know the school's needs, we know our system goals, and we're making sure that all of our expenses are aligned to those goals, then I also think we discuss with department heads about what the needs are. You know, how many buses are going to be coming off that we need to replace? What is our staffing capacity? What technology are we going to have to replace? And right now we're in a pretty good place with technology, but the bad part of that is it's all going to be outdated about the same time, which is going to be a huge cost. So I think not only my department heads and school level, but also your help from the finance department and being able to sit down prior to presenting that budget to the board and going through it line item by line item and saying, this year I expect this category, we're not going to need the funds or all the funds, and it's a surplus that maybe we could move somewhere else and better utilize.
And one more question. So, Fentress County Board of Education is one of, if not the largest employer within Fentress County. What does transparency mean to you, not only to the community and students, but also to your employees?
I think transparency is everything. I think if you call our office and need or want information, we need to be able to give you that information promptly and quickly to be able to answer questions. I think also if we're consistent in that manner and welcoming and inviting, that we build people's confidence in the school system.
Thank you.
All right, Miss Christie, teaching's like a lot of professions. I guess right now there's no secret there's a teacher shortage. It was mentioned in the previous session, substitute shortages. But give us some ideas of ways you would work to support and retain the staff that you have now.
One of the ways that I would like to support and maintain the staff that we currently have, first of all, make them feel valued. Okay. Second of all, we really need to look at our current salary schedule. People, sometimes feel valued by their compensation, but at the same time, some people would do with less compensation for a job that they are valued in and appreciated in. For instance, I'll talk a little bit about janitors. Our janitors currently come in making $8.25 an hour, and then can go up from there based on years of experience. In the summertime, they have to make up their 13 days of snow, and then at each school, they have 300 hours that they can share between the janitors for the summer work. A lot of times, summer work is just as difficult as the regular school year work, in that they're stripping the floors, waxing the floors, moving furniture. And currently, during the summer months, during that extra 100 hours, our janitors' wages are reduced to minimum wage, or their minimum pay. So for the same work, they're getting a reduced amount of pay. And to me, that doesn't make sense as far as being able to keep and keep those people in those positions. Again, with teachers and substitutes, I think we have to, again, look at our customer service options, what we're doing to attract them and keep them.
Got one more. Sorry.
Awesome.
Miss Jenny over there mentioned or wanted you to talk about your strengths. I want you to elaborate on a weakness and how you've overcame it.
I think I have a lot of weaknesses, to be honest. I know that this is a weakness and also probably a strength in that sometimes I'm a procrastinator. Okay? And so wait until the last minute, although I'm very good under pressure, is not sometimes ideal. So that weakness is a weakness that I have to work on. And with having federal deadlines and regular deadlines, I think that has helped me to be better at not procrastinating, especially when the workload gets heavy and you have multiple deadlines.
I started with a specific question. I'm going to ask you a broad question this time. What do you think is the most important thing for the school system to focus on over the next 10 years?
I think the most important thing is educating our students. Truly, I never want to set limits on what a child can do. I want to prepare them for whatever their future and whatever they want to do later on. So I think we have to truly focus on giving our students the best educational opportunity that they can have and providing them some diverse learning opportunities.
Christy, I think Mr. Beatty touched on my question I have now. The existing schools that you have, do you see any need for expansion, or what do you feel on repair of those existing buildings?
Currently, our oldest two schools are Clark Range High School and York Elementary. Actually, we've been able to take advantage of some of the ESSER funds to start doing some much-needed repairs and renovations on those schools. One thing that I would say is that each school is different and has different needs. Our student enrollment has increased. It was down the last year or so, but after the pandemic and coming out this year, we have increased. At this time, I don't see a need for a new building as far as population. That might be something later on down the road. So I think we need to care for and renovate our existing buildings to keep them up to standard and to provide a good educational place for students to come and learn.
I'll follow up on like what I asked earlier about catching the kids up. I had an employee that asked me this question, so that's why I'm relaying it on. So her child has had a hard time and has struggled. She went through the summer camp, which she enjoyed, but sometimes that's, you know, you got small children and they become overburdened and they get burned out, things like that. And I know, speaking of the spouse of an educator, they've got burned out. You know how that is. You're talking about teachers having to learn things. My wife's not a technology person, so it was a real struggle for her to try to, you know, do some of these things. She got it, and she's better for it. But anyway, what's some things that you can do, you think, you know, to help these kids move along, or the teachers go through these things and not be so, I guess, overburdened, or I guess that's what I'm saying. So.
I think we need to really reevaluate what we have in place. We need to look at, with the teacher voice, the workload that is going on. Are we doing too much? Are we repeating ourselves? What can be removed and taken away? As far as the students, I think, again, we need to provide opportunities that really engage them and that they really want to be in. I know that we have adopted a new curriculum this year, CKLA and K5, and that curriculum has some great opportunities for culminating tasks for teachers to really do projects and to celebrate stuff. So I think I would like to see more opportunities for teachers and kids to be able to have opportunities where they're able to freely choose and then celebrate the successes they're having in their class and their curriculum, but really look at their workload and what can be removed.
Thank you.
Ms. Christie, this next question is a sensitive question, but it is a question that needs to be asked, I think, because I think it's a question that we're going to have to deal with sooner or later. As we all know, across the nation, what happened in Loudoun County, Virginia, we do not want to happen here. And where a transgender student made a decision that he did not want to attend or use a facility according to his birth gender. Now, what do you feel like you can do to prepare our system and to help prevent that? Do you have anything in place in your mind if you are elected for this position, or, you know, get this position? Is there, what are your plans to deal with a situation like this?
So currently, I think this is foremost of a lot of our principals and assistant principals' mind. I think we've already started encountering these types of situations, and there is a huge need, and it has been requested for training. I think we truly need training on civil rights, what's allowable, what's not, and how to handle these situations. I also think every child deserves a free and public education, and whether it's restroom facilities, I think that's something that we can provide an alternate restroom facility so that that student is not singled out, but at the same time, the other students' rights are not infringed upon.
Very good.
And Ms. Christie, I have been in education either as a teacher or administrator for over 40 years. And one thing, things change so fast. You know, I mean, they changed fast before, but now it's faster than ever before. And one thing that I have noticed to be a problem at times is administrators that have lost touch with what is actually going on in the classroom. You know, if you lose touch with what real life is like in a classroom, you can't effectively do your job. What do you do to stay current with what's actually happening in the classroom?
First, I communicate a lot with teachers, whether it be emails or in-person meetings. But I tell you, the best experience that I've had happened last year. We had a teacher that had an emergency situation and was unable to teach. She was a virtual teacher, and our system did not have a backup plan for what we would do for virtual teachers. So I got to work that morning, and I found out that we had a class full of kids that didn't have a teacher. So it would have been easy for me to get online, to get in their classroom and say, class is canceled today, and we'll be back tomorrow. But instead, I took about 10 minutes, got my thoughts together, accessed the curriculum, tried to preview it the best I could, and for 3 to 4 days, I taught the curriculum and I taught the students. I had third graders, fourth graders, and fifth graders online with me. And it wasn't that I didn't have other job responsibilities to take care of those days, but our students deserved to be educated. They deserved to have somebody in front of them on those days. So one of the things that really helped me during that and really stood out to me was, first of all, being able to put myself back in the role of the teacher and to see the volume of work that they were having to do to prepare for the lesson. For one of the lessons in our new curriculum, a teacher's probably reading 25 to 30 pages to be able to prepare. We did take off lesson planning so that they could prepare by reading. So just being able to put myself back in the teacher's shoes to see their struggles, to see the struggles of virtual and the successes of challenge. I know with third graders, there was a parent signed on with every single one of those children. So we really had some parent engagement going on. But again, it challenged me, technology-wise and curriculum-wise. So being able to step back in the teacher's shoes was a valuable learning experience for me and has really grounded me and helped me to really have the perspective from the teacher.
Describe your code of ethics, and do you think the same code of ethics should apply to students as it does to your staff, teachers, and yourself?
Yes. So with my code of ethics, I truly believe that we should all be held to high expectations and the same code of ethics. I don't think it's fair for us to hold each other to different standards if you're a teacher versus a student. So I think that would be the same. With code of ethics, I think, again, I've said this earlier, but we treat each other the way we want to be treated. We hold high expectations. We do what is right and what is compliant as well.
All right. Ms. Christie, because I am your bookkeeper, this is where this question is coming from. When the pandemic began in March of 2020, a huge millions and millions of dollars, untold millions, came onto your desk. And you did face a lot of specific challenges during the pandemic and still are. Can you just give us a few examples of some of the challenges you faced during that time and how you overcame them?
You know, it's really nice having a few days off work when the schools first closed down, but then reality hit. I think we worked harder the first summer than ever before. And I'm not just saying me, I'm saying everybody at the central office, our principals, our assistant principals, preparing for and getting ready. With COVID and the pandemic, every single day we saw a different challenge. We had to work on the first summer a continuous learning plan of how we would successfully reopen schools in a safe manner and be able to transition to a different model of education, whether it be online, virtual, or in person quickly. So there were several instances that I was challenged with that. I had to bring a lot of stakeholders together for ESSER planning and follow a lot of additional guidelines.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any community leaders in the audience that wants to speak? We have a few minutes left. Anybody want to speak? If not, that'll conclude this session. We'll meet again at 3:15. Thank you, Ms. Christie. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. We're a couple of minutes late. This is with the faculty and staff. What we've been doing on the other tracks here is letting the candidate, Ms. Christy Hall, we appreciate her coming today, let her give her opening remarks, and then we'll start, since we only have that side of the table, we'll start over here on the left and go around. And then at the end, if you have any closing remarks or second question, we'll go around twice. We'll go around twice, and then let Ms. Christie, if she's got any closing remarks, let her. After we see if anybody else comes in, because some of the teachers, I understand, was not able to get here at 3:15, but they might be here at a little later, maybe 3:30 or whatever, and I don't want to leave them out if they have a question. So we'll just wait and see how that pans out. But with that, Ms. Christie, I'll let you go ahead and give your opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Thank you for being here today and showing interest in the Director of Schools position. I am both humbled and honored to be considered for this position. My name is Christy Hall, and I'm the Federal Programs Director for our system. I have grown up in this system, went to elementary school at Grimsley Elementary, and graduated from Clark Range High School. I attended Tennessee Technological University for my undergraduate degree and later pursued both my master's and educational specialist degrees. Prior to being hired as a teacher, I did my student teaching at Pine Haven Elementary School and substituted in both Cumberland and Fentress counties. I started teaching at Clark Range Elementary as a 5th and 6th grade teacher and was there until we opened the new school at South Fentress Elementary. After teaching for 7 years, I was transferred into my current position, where I have served for the past 14 years. In 2016, I was nominated and selected by my peers as the Upper Cumberland Supervisor of the Year. During my teaching years, I became a volunteer 4-H horse leader for the county. I worked with students across the county in horse bow, hippology, horse judging, and shows. I fundraised, had a highly competitive team, and took them to competitions across the state and even to Louisiana, where they excelled. I also was the sponsor for the Clark Range High School cheerleading squad, and that was quite an experience. I had no background knowledge or no experience in cheerleading, but I quickly learned and adapted and was able to support and coach my team. Again, I fundraised to purchase uniforms, pay for camp, and other needed supplies. I traveled with the squad to camps and to games and had a very active pep club. I invested in this community as my husband owns and has operated a tire store for 30 years. We have 2 daughters. The oldest one is a first-year resident doctor at Erlanger Hospital in Chattanooga, and the youngest one just started pre-K at South Fentress Elementary School. I'd like to tell you a little bit about why I do what I do every day. As I previously mentioned, I have 2 daughters with quite an age span, as most of you know. My oldest daughter was a very bright and gifted student. When she left home and went to college, she came home a little bit into the semester, 4 or 5 weeks, and she was distraught. She was overwhelmed. She was crying and in tears and saying she couldn't do it. Let me back up and say that she loved her high school and elementary school experience. She had wonderful teachers that she respected and held in high regards even today. But while she loved school and her teachers, she wasn't prepared academically, mentally, or through her educational experience to be successful in college. As a parent and with my knowledge as an educator, I was able to support her, encourage her, be her cheerleader, and help her find the supports that college offered so that she could be successful. I thought a lot about this situation and being an administrator for the system. I thought about the other students, the students that had came home with her, that I had taught, that I had coached, and that I had watched grow up. How were they going to be successful? Who was going to support them, accomplish their goals? Who was going to cheer for and encourage them? As the director of schools, I will make decisions based on what is best for children. I will be their advocate. I will be their champion. I will consider the voices of the teachers, faculty, and staff that my decisions impact. I will be professional every single day in my interactions. I will be transparent and accountable for the decisions I make. And as you can tell from my why, and as my experience as an educator, a coach, a youth leader, and an administrator, I will support, encourage, motivate students, and inspire students, teachers, and staff to help move our system forward.
Hi, Miss Christie. Anita Johnson, York Elementary, 4th and 5th grade math. My question is concerning some of the loss that we've had just because of COVID and no fault of anyone's. But I know a lot of time was spent on summer camps this summer, a lot of energy for the kids. So, but not all kids could attend summer camp, and not all kids can attend after school extended learning programs. So what is your plan for kids who have had loss, as most of them have? And how do you plan on helping us get those kids caught up without adding more stress to the kids and the staff?
Thank you, Ms. Anita, for your question. It's a very good question. What I'd like to say and recognize, first of all, is that we never expect a teacher to catch a student up that is 2 to 3 years behind. What we expect of our teachers is to provide a year's worth of growth for our students. And being a system, the system means that we all have our part in educating that child. So if a teacher can get their year's worth of growth plus a little bit of catch-up growth, and as we work together, we can catch a child up. Offerings like summer school and after-school programs are great, but you're right, not all kids have access to those. So one of the ways that we can do that and work together is by allowing opportunities through our RTI program for students to receive intervention. But I think we also have a product to sell. I think students need to want to come to school. They want to be there. And sometimes drill and kill isn't the way to get them there. So we need to vary our opportunities that we provide for students. We obviously need to be standards aligned, but we need to have some culminating tasks or performance opportunities that really excite students and that they want to participate in. We do have another unique opportunity coming up with the Tennessee All-Core Tutoring, where hopefully next school year that we can hire additional certified teachers to provide tutoring to students during the school day, during the RTI, that are actually bubble students. So we'd have to commit resources to be able to fund those positions and not add to additional burden and work on the teacher, but be able to pull resources that would help.
All right, my name is Brandon Crouch. I'm from South Fentress Elementary, and I am going to be asking questions that I've been given from faculty and staff at my school. I'm going to start with a question of my own. In the previous session at 2 p.m., you communicated that procrastination was a character trait that you struggle with in your life. I commend you for being able to reflect on imperfections and knowing yourself well. How do you plan on utilizing your district-level staff and school administration to ensure that this personal trait does not adversely affect your job performance?
Thank you, Mr. Crouch, for that question. A lot of times when we have character traits that are favorable or not so favorable, the people around us do pick up on those traits. So every day I have to work on that trait. And with that being said, I think I need to surround myself with people that are persistent about keeping deadlines. I know that I have some bookkeepers that definitely come to me and reiterate. And having multiple deadlines also makes you more aware so that you're not more willing to put those things off. So I want to surround myself with administrators and others that have traits that are more of strengths that complement my weaknesses.
Tammy Terry, Pine Haven Elementary. Ms. Christie, in your current position, I'm sure that you have noticed some strengths and weaknesses in our system. Do you plan to make any changes? And if so, what will they be?
You know, I think that a lot of times it's very easy to point out the challenges and the struggles. But we have a lot of great things going on in the system. And first of all, we need to recognize and value our teachers. They are one of our greatest strengths. They have gone above and beyond throughout this pandemic in educating our students. So I think we need to build on our strengths. They're committed every single day when they come to the classroom to do good work. We need to build on our strengths. Our challenges, we have multiple challenges. As a teacher, you face challenges of teaching students that's in your classroom while simultaneously teaching students virtually. That puts you at a very vulnerable position. And so I think we need to explore ways that we can alleviate that stress and that burden. Additionally, I think we have some teacher shortages and teacher retention issues that we need to address. Again, I spoke about this earlier in the other sessions, but we truly need to look at our customer service and how we appeal to others and what product we are providing for students, parents, and staff so that they want to come and be a part of our system.
Jenny Turner, Pine Haven Elementary. I'm asking questions on behalf of teachers also. The teachers and support staff pay scales in Fentress County are much lower than surrounding counties. Do you plan to address this issue if you are selected to be our new director?
I definitely think that our pay scale is something that needs to be looked at across the board. And when I say pay scale, I'm not just talking about teacher compensation. I'm talking about compensation of all of our employees. We can never spend more than we have, so we have to be fiscally sound. But as I gave earlier, we have a lot of scenarios where there's discrepancies in pay. Our system doesn't value experience or the degree of work that people are doing in our system. I talked about earlier, and I'll share it with you, our janitors come in starting at 8.25, and they work all through the school year, and they do the same work. And in the summertime, they do the same work, but they also strip floors, move furniture, that kind of stuff. The first 13 days in the summer, they are committed to making up snow days. And then there's 300 hours per school that they share amongst themselves. During the summer months, those same employees are reduced back down to their minimum wage. So it's hard to attract and keep those employees in the position. I know that our school board has put together a committee to study salary and compensation. If selected director, I would love the opportunity to be on that committee. I'm not saying that I could come up with the solution, but I'm saying I could work with the team, and I think I could bring valuable and relevant information to the team to help us look at what we could do as far as compensation.
Sherry Stilts, Fentress County STEM educator, which, as you know, is a new position this year, so we're learning as we go. We have had, for years past, a shortage of skilled workers in Tennessee, and we know that STEM is the key to that, along with CTE in high school. So what is your vision for STEM and CTE in the future for Fentress County schools?
I think STEM and CTE has been a much-needed thing, and truly excited to have you on board this year and reaching out to each of the schools, trying to push that needle forward. I think a lot of our students are not going to be students that's going to go to college. We have got to prepare students for what happens after school, whether it be a trade or a job. And so CTE and STEM education is really the place to do that. Not only that, I want our students exposed to those opportunities to see what things interest them. I want to provide them opportunities that challenge them and that are unique and different, because living in a rural area, sometimes they aren't exposed to those things. So I definitely am a proponent of STEM and CTE, and I would like to continue providing a STEM educator across the district, but I would also like to look at how we phase that in and bring that to all students.
Neil Burge, and I'm actually here for Miss Wendy Bradfield and my school. She is sick and sent me all of her questions to ask. The first question I want to ask is, one of the biggest challenges that my teachers at our school and schools across the county have is that since you are currently involved in the school system, it's hard to see where you lie as far as which programs you specifically agree with and which ones you don't. Mm-hmm. So can you name one specific program or policy or current procedure that we currently have that you will get away, that you know that you don't, that you'll get rid of, and why?
So first of all, I would like to say I think that has been the biggest challenge throughout and in the community is where does my confidence lie and what is my leadership style, and looking at that underneath the current administration. So first I would say that my leadership style is different than current administration in that I have more of a shared leadership style. I think we should model that shared leadership by bringing together people of varied strengths to a collective team to basically fight for the same common goal and to help us reach that common goal. One of the traits that I possess is listening. I am a good listener. But in the past, even though I've been a good listener, at the end of the day, I didn't have the ability to make the decisions. And so if you talk about one specific thing that I would probably address or change, it would probably be looking at assessment. So with assessment, it depends upon if you're math or ELA, or of course science or social studies too, but math and ELA seem to be tested the most. It also depends on the grade level that you're in. I would like to bring in a group of stakeholders, including teachers, students, to look at the assessments that we're given and how can we reduce the number of assessments that students have to do every year.
Can you give us some examples of how you have worked with principals to improve their performance in the following cases, as instructional leaders and the improvement of administrative performance in the school?
So first of all, I appreciate the question, Mr. Crouch. And as far as instructional leaders, I have worked diligently with the principals and assistant principals. I've done that through principal coaching. Several years I've done that with looking at their data, but not just what data is on paper, but also data that's characteristics of their school and of their students. Also, this year, one of the things that we have put into place is the Principal Leadership PLCs, where we are bringing together principals. And we actually started this, myself and the other administrators, to address that we do have some new administrators this year. In the elementary schools, we have 2 new assistant principals and a new principal. So we really wanted to be able to support them and grow them. So we started a principal PLC, and we have tried to focus around their administrative rubric of what's expected by them and how it's evaluated. And then we have been able to fold in nicely our work with NIET and the TRAIN network, and to really push that needle forward with principal leadership. The second part of your question was about admin. Could you repeat that second part? With administrative performance. Administrative performance obviously starts with high expectations. And one of the things that I have done is not only set high expectations, but tried to build the capacity of the others around me and being a team player, trying to involve the other administrators at a central office level, as well as the principals and assistant principals in the decisions that I make.
The amount of extra duties that teachers are required to undertake seems to increase with each year, causing a high level of teacher burnout. How will you help to lower the teacher burnout and possibly get rid of some of those extra duties?
First off, as I said earlier, I would like to put some committees together. I think we need a lot of roundtable discussion where teachers, are listened to and valued, because they bring a very important perspective to the picture. They are the ones that's in the classroom with the students every single day. I think we need to reflect on our current practices and consider what things are we doing just because we've been doing it for 10, 20, 30 years. What things are actually practical? What things are being effective? What data do we have that supports those things? So I'd really like to hear the teacher voice in that and bring together some committees and have some roundtable discussion.
How do you plan to visit classrooms throughout the district across grade bands to ensure the best practices and instructional material is meeting district expectations?
So I think, based on my earlier questions from the other groups, that I am a strong proponent of being in the classrooms and doing walkthroughs. I think most of you have been in your classroom at some point, if not multiple times. I think we have to be in the classroom to see, are those instructional resources and materials quality resources? What struggles are they giving us? So I plan to visit schools frequently and be in there. I also think it's not fair to teachers when we're not in the classroom and then we just pop in to evaluate them. But really looking at the instructional materials in the interaction with the teacher and student is very critical. So I plan to visit classrooms frequently.
You may have heard the statement, if we can see it, we can be it. So if our students can see things, they can possibly be those things. But if they can't ever get in touch with those or see those, then how can we expect them to ever become those? So as far as taking our kids to places or visiting EPSOs, early post-secondary opportunities, what do you see for us to be able to do in the future to get our kids out there seeing things so they can be those things?
Earlier, I spoke about educational opportunities and exposures for students. We may be small town, but we don't have to be backwoods. Our students need to be able to get out and to see new things and experience new things because they really don't know what's outside of our system and our county. So I would be a strong supporter. I would help fund the bus and trip and the fees for the bus drivers to be able to take students on those trips to see things outside of the system.
When new families move into our county and ask for advice on schools, I tell them each school has their own strength and a strong suit. And I tell them that it's important for them to know their own student and what they need. As far as schools, we all have our own strengths, and we have data to show that. And that's been the heavy focus of data-driven decisions. Is there still going to be a strong push to keep us all the same, or are we actually going to look at the data for what that individual school needs and address their strengths and weaknesses?
I think most of you know I'm also very versed in data and have pushed data. But I also know that each school has its own personality, its own logistics, and its own population of students and teachers. So I think we have to look at the school as an individual and treat it as an individual based on its individual needs. I also think we can't just look at one snapshot of data, that we have to look at data over time and growth, and we also have to look at the challenges and the celebrations and the diversity of each of the schools. So I would look at schools as individuals rather than as one pool.
Kind of a follow-up to, so pacing guides, which our district has a super strict, I'm supposed to be on the same place as the other school versus the other school, even though we're very different. Mm-hmm. What are going to be your thoughts, your practices on pacing guides?
I've worked with pacing guides a lot in the past, especially with some of you. A pacing guide is basically just a roadmap for the overall year. We know we have these standards and we have this many days, and how are we going to get there? All students deserve the right to be exposed to all those standards because at the end of the year, they're going to be tested over. But what I believe is that you bring teachers in and teachers help you develop those pacing guides. I also know that school happens, that your school has an assembly, that your school gets out early because we had a water leak or whatever. So we have to adjust for those differences. But again, I think that with teacher input, we can build those pacing guides. And then when we're off track, if we're off track 2 or 3 days, schools happen. It's not a big deal. But if we're off track a long ways, then we need to look at, are we having to stop to support students? And is there a different time of the day that we could support them through RTR or whatever? But we make those decisions with teachers.
While academic curriculums are extremely important for student learning and curriculum growth, there are other disciplines such as music, media, and physical education that help to provide a holistic effect on student development. Do you have any ideas or suggestions that you would like to see implemented within those discipline areas in the following year if chosen? And as an addendum, just because I hear kids say it all the time, will art be a consideration for a future encore class?
I love it. Thank you, Mr. Crouch. So one of the things that I've tossed around, I think some of the other administrators in the room has also tossed around, but again, it is contingent upon funding. So how do we utilize the resources that we currently have and be able to do that? I would love to see this middle schools for us to have some teachers. If we had 4 teachers across the district, then we could work into the encore rotation some different subjects that each school from 1 to 9 weeks would be involved in. We could have algebra, we could have band and chorus, we could have STEM education, and a much-needed keyboard, even for a 9 week. So our teachers could float from school to school, and I would love to see that opportunity for students. Again, that would be contingent on working out the details and the funding component.
Currently, classroom teachers are losing planning time weekly, depending on whether they're meeting with consultants, PLCs, or just having meetings that are IEPs, other meetings. As director, how will you ensure that teachers' planning time is protected?
Planning time is critical for teachers. That is their time and their opportunity to prepare for lessons and to prepare to differentiate those lessons for individual student needs. I realize that across the district we have various meetings, as you mentioned, consultants. Just this week alone, we have consultants in the building that will take one of your planning times more than likely. You also have a school-level RTI meeting that's going to take one of your plannings. So in this week, you're probably going to have, at the most, three planning periods. So we have to look at ways that we can be innovative and reduce that burden and come up with solutions together of how we can make sure that teachers have adequate planning time to prepare for each lesson.
You may have already answered this today, I'm not sure, but teacher morale is low. What will you do specifically to strengthen this?
Thank you, Ms. Jenny, for that question. Teacher morale has been low. Teachers have a tremendous amount of workload on them every single day. So I think we need to come together as a team, look at what that workload entails. What can we alleviate? What can we get rid of? What is unnecessary? And also, I want to be able to just listen and value teachers. Teachers are the ones doing the work every single day. So again, I want to hear their voice, and I want to value them and have them help me on the solution to those problems.
STEM again. Okay. As far as a STEM room in the school that different classes could utilize, some schools have a STEM lab they're currently trying to set up. They're far from being finished. So do you see in the future any funding that could be put in place to get those online and going quicker and much more prepared for the kids to come in for all grade levels, not just for upper grades and not just a science lab, a STEM room that they could come in and not be afraid to use glue and paint and everything that they need?
So one of the advantages I have with this question is that I've overseen the federal budgets. I think we need to look at all the budgets and how they can work cohesively together. I do think there is opportunities for the federal budgets to be able to help in this endeavor. This year, our students and last year have been pretty much on a one-to-one initiative as far as computers and devices. So what that has done has freed up some computer lab space that would be a good space for those STEM labs and STEM rooms. So I think if we work together with the other department heads, the other people building their budgets, that we could be able to secure funding and budget to help provide for labs in each of the schools.
This one kind of goes back to curriculum guides and pacing guides as well. It seems that the majority of the background of people in central office have been math focused in the past. Which has kind of led to, it feels like, some of the policy and ideas that may be applicable to math that isn't necessarily, has like kind of gone over to ELA whenever it doesn't really mesh as far as curriculum choices, as far as like math being more linear where it builds on itself and stuff like that. Where this year, and last year, we were encouraged to use the book. So how does that work with current research that shows that student choice comes into play, that pop culture, common stuff, like newer stuff, whenever the authors from textbooks say that they put in the cheapest stories that they can get, and that they also say, I messaged one of them, emailed one of them, and I asked him about using the book. And he said, the author of the book said that his district does not use textbooks and that he only does it to help districts that, make their teachers use textbooks and to hopefully become more progressive, and that he does not adhere or he does not advocate for curriculum guides, pacing guides, that he really thinks that it should be in teachers' hands and the ones closest to the students. So how do those, how are ELA people assured that research is being done that for subject-specific stuff?
So in ELA, as all of you know, this year or last year we implemented a new curriculum, and it couldn't have been a worse year to implement a curriculum with COVID. But with saying that, the State Department also made some changes for districts. In the past, we were able to blanket adopt a curriculum and not purchase. That was not an option this year, so that the system had to adopt a curriculum and purchase the curriculum. We also have to sign off on assurances that we are teaching the curriculum. So within that framework, we do have some constraints of having to teach the curriculum in ELA. However, within that curriculum, I think we can provide students with some student choice. Being with the textbook, there is multiple student novels that come with it. So we can give students choice of novels. We could also give students in CKLA some choice of culminating activities and tasks. We can also explore outside of our Tier 1 instruction during our encore time of how we can provide additional offerings and student choices.
Hey, we've had several people come in. Does anybody in the audience, this is your time if you want to get up and ask a question. Feel free to come up and ask Ms. Christie a question. Anybody? No takers. All right. Ms. Christie, do you have any final remarks you want to make?
First and foremost, I want to thank you for considering me for this position. In closing, I would like to share a short story with you. You may recall this story because it was made into a movie called The Great Escape. What makes this story great isn't because it had never been tried before. Prisoners of war often tried to escape. But what made this story so great is the sheer scale of the task. It almost seemed impossible. In 1944, at a Nazi prisoner of war camp, a group of prisoners was dedicated to facilitating the escape of more than 250 men in a single night. Their plan consisted of digging a tunnel from the interior of the camp to the outside of the camp close to the forest. The tunnel would need air pumped into it, electricity to light the passage, and a means to dispose massive amounts of dirt. The materials needed by the prisoners were unbelievable. 4,000 bed slats, 1,700 blankets, 1,300 battens, 1,000 feet of electrical wire, and 30 shovels, just to name a few. It's hard to fathom how a prisoner of a Nazi war camp would be able to secure the needed materials and not get caught or it being noticed. In addition to this, every prisoner that would escape would need civilian clothes, identity cards, compasses, and rations. Again, the sheer scope of what was needed was unbelievable. Each person had a job to do, and everyone depended on each other. It took almost a year before the prisoners were ready to attempt their escape. What is so impressive in this story is that each person worked together, focused on a common goal that was worth the risk. The students in Fentress County are worth our best effort every day. I have built relationships with people in this county. I have strong working knowledge of the system and how it runs, what strengths we possess together, and what challenges we struggle with. Every person in our system is important and plays a critical role in educating our students. As I stated earlier, as the director of schools, I will make decisions based on what is best for students. I will be their advocate. I will be their champion. I will be accountable for my decisions, and I will be transparent. I will be professional every single day in my interactions. I will encourage, motivate, and inspire students, teachers, and staff so that we can move our system forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll conclude this session. Okay, I call this meeting to order. Fentress County Board of Education, roll call, please.
Nikki Voles.
Here.
Darlene Brannon.
Present.
Kathy Williams.
Here.
Gary Peters.
Here.
Sierra Koger.
Here.
Melissa Brandstetter.
Present.
Karen Cooper.
Here.
Felicia Garrett.
Here.
William Cody.
Here.
Eddie Cook.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Tonight our candidate is Miss Christy Hall. The rules for this interview tonight, she'll be given 10 minutes to do an introduction, followed by 50 minutes of questions and answers from the board. So with that, we'll let Miss Christy speak, and at the end of it, she'll have some closing remarks if she likes. Okay, Miss Christy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you for being here today and being interested in the Director of Schools position. I am both humbled and honored to be considered for this position. My name is Christy Hall, and I am currently the Federal Programs Director for our system. I have grown up in this system, attending Grimsley Elementary and Clark Range High School. After graduating, I attended Tennessee Tech University for my undergraduate degree and later pursued both my master's and educational specialist degrees. Prior to being hired, I was a student teacher at Pine Haven Elementary and substituted at both Cumberland County and Fentress counties. I started my teaching career at Clark Range Elementary as a 5th and 6th grade teacher. I stayed there until the new school, South Fentress Elementary, was built. After teaching for 7 years, I was transferred into my current position that I have served on for the past 17 years. In 2016, I was nominated and selected by my peers as the Upper Cumberland Supervisor of the Year. During my teaching years, I became a volunteer 4-H horse leader for the county. I worked with students across the county in horse bow, hippology, horse judging, and showing. I fundraised and had a highly competitive team and took them across the state and even to Louisiana, where they excelled in competition. I also was the sponsor for the high school cheerleading squad, and if any of you know me, cheerleading is not where my background is, so I had to learn and adapt quickly. Again, I had to fundraise to purchase uniforms, pay for camp, and other needed supplies. I traveled with the squad to camp and to games and had an active pep club. I invested in this county as my husband has owned and operated a tire store for 30 years. We have 2 daughters. My oldest daughter is in her first year as a resident doctor at Erlanger Hospital in Chattanooga. My youngest daughter has just started South Fentress Pre-K. I would like to tell you a little bit about why I do what I do every day. As I previously stated, I have 2 daughters with quite an age span between them. My oldest daughter was a very bright and even gifted student. However, when she went to college, she came home after a few weeks into the college semester, and she was at her breaking point. She was stressed. She was upset. She said she just couldn't do it. Let me back up and say that she loved her high school experience and her elementary school experience. She had wonderful teachers that she holds in high regards even today. But while she loved school and her teachers, she was not prepared academically, mentally, or through her educational experience to be successful at college. As a parent, and with my knowledge as an educator, I was able to support, encourage, motivate, and find ways and opportunities that the college had to help her be successful. As an administrator of the system, I reflected greatly on this. I thought about the students that she had grown up with that had come to our home, the students that I had taught, the students that I had coached. Who would be their champion? How were they going to be successful? Who was going to support them and help them accomplish their goals? As the director of schools, I will make decisions based on what is best for students. I will be their advocate. I will be their champion. But I will hear the voices of the teachers and employees that my decisions impact. I will be transparent and accountable for my decisions. I will be professional every single day in my interactions. And as you can tell from my why and my educational experience as a teacher, a youth leader, a coach, and an administrator, I will support, encourage, motivate, and inspire students, teachers, and staff to help move our system forward.
Thank you. Ms. Hall, what will you do to create an atmosphere in the schools that will lead to education excellence for all students?
When I think about excellence, I think about the very best. I think this starts with high expectations. And I also think that it starts with building relationships. Just as we ask teachers to form and build relationships with their students in the classroom, I need to build relationships and trust with my faculties, my teachers, and my administrators. There's a world of difference in insisting someone does something and creating an atmosphere where they can grow into wanting to do that. I think that quote by Fred Rogers best sums up my thoughts on that.
Christy, please cite an instance in your current position that demonstrates your ability to build confidence in schools.
When I think back over the years in the course of the programs that I have helped to implement, one that stands out and that I'll speak more about tonight is our reading initiative. During our reading initiative, we had very clear expectations. We outlined them and communicated them with teachers. We had non-negotiables. We also provided supports through training, and we had instructional routines that we followed. We also found out that we have some fantastic K-2 teachers who that I would put up against anybody. But during that process, they knew what they were expected. They did what they were expected to do. And as they went out into statewide trainings through the reading course, they also realized that we had been on the right track and they were well informed, and that built confidence in those teachers.
Thank you.
Tell us about the most important decision that you've made in your last or current position? How did you involve the people who would be directly affected by that position?
Thank you, Ms. Nikki. Again, with this one, I think I would speak to the reading initiative. It has by far been the most important decision that I've made for students, but it's also been the most challenging and hard when actually implementing it. So when a few years ago that I considered this, I knew that our test scores were really low. I knew that across our district, and looking at standardized tests, less than a third of our kids were proficient in reading. And thinking about those kids, thinking about my own kid, I knew that that wasn't good enough. I had been hearing about some other districts that had been successful, and our State Department had been discussing it and shared a book with us called Annual Growth and Catch-Up Growth. They also said that if anybody was interested in it, we could request a copy from the State Department. So I requested a copy, and when I got it, I laid it on my desk. Laid it on the corner of my desk for quite some time until I finally picked it up and read it. And when I read it, I knew that this was something that we had to do that was good for kids. So I went to my director and asked for permission to start a book study with our administrators, our principals and assistants, and our instructional coaches. Over the course of the next few months, I led them through the book study. And what we said when they come to the meetings is, give us 1 hour of your time. Let's focus on kids. Let's put our cell phones aside, our school problems aside, and let's dig into this book and focus on kids. Truly, we wrestled and argued together. We couldn't figure out at times how this was going to be possible, but we stayed the course. After I did the book study with the principals, assistant principals, and instructional coaches, we then sought funding to be able to pay 25 teachers to participate in the same book study. And so a group of 25 teachers then came in and we repeated the book study with them. When we finally started implementing the changes, to say it was hard is an understatement. It was very difficult, but we stayed the course. I was able to meet with teachers during PLC meetings and to be in classrooms. Over the course of the years, we've had many successes with it and many challenges, but I have tried my best to listen to teachers and their concerns.
In your administration, what avenues are open for you to listen to the concerns of employees, students, parents, and the community? And how do you plan to have time available for all of those involved?
Thank you, Ms. Sierra. First of all, I think I have to be easily accessible by all those stakeholder groups. I want to be in the office daily, but also in the schools where the work is really happening. I think we have to find multiple ways to engage our stakeholders. And when I talk about stakeholders, I do mean each group, students, parents, faculty members, and staff. One of the ways that I would like to do that is by having committees for certain topics, especially the topics that we're really challenged with. I think we need to bring people in and to put the concerns on the table and help come up with some solutions. I would also like to have opportunities for roundtable discussions in a similar fashion and would make those a priority.
One who has the wisdom to know when change is necessary and the ability to generate such change is our criterion 4. My question for you, describe a significant change you initiated in your district or school and tell us what evidence you have to show it was a positive change. How did you build support for that change?
Thank you,
Just a minute, Kristi. Isn't that
Different question.
different question than was last week?
We have a different
Let's just ask
person
the same
here.
question.
We still have
Everybody.
to ask the same question.
Then may I ask 2 questions?
No,
No.
that wasn't our guideline, darling.
All right, we'll back up and let you have the question they had last week. How do you keep up with research and initiatives that may drive change?
Again, Ms. Sterling, there's multiple ways that I do that. First and foremost, I read. I read the commissioner's updates, supervisors' newsletters, federal program and oversight letters that we receive by email communications. I also read educational literature and books by prominent researchers in education. I also think an important part of staying abreast of initiatives and change that might be occurring is by networking, regional networking opportunities for supervisors, like-minded supervisors across the region to get together and to share ideals and challenges. I also utilize social media platforms to follow researchers and to be able to access workshops and conferences that it's not possible to attend virtually.
I was writing something down. Describe how you've led a school or system in creating a vision and building support to accomplish that vision.
Several years ago, our district went through SACS accreditation. I was tasked with learning with the process and leading our system through the process. To do that, I took the training to actually be a SACS reviewer and went to Lee County, North Carolina to participate on a review team for the Lee County School District. I learned the aspects of what the reviewers were looking for, the standards that a school system would have to display to be able to receive SACS accreditation. I came back, presented to the board on the night that I came back, and started the process of seeking our SACS accreditation. We ultimately received that SACS accreditation, but one of the findings from that accreditation visit was that we didn't have a vision and mission. So again, I took on the task of leading our system through setting a vision and mission. We brought in our school admin, and we asked them to go back to the schools, meet with their faculties and staff, and ask them to come up with vision and mission statements that were relevant to them. Our principals and assistant principals brought that back to the district, and we met again, and this time I led them through an activity where we narrowed those vision and mission statements down to 2 to 3. Our principals and assistants then went back again to the schools, and we sent out a survey to all stakeholders, including people outside the school system, and asked them to vote on the vision and mission statement. The vision and mission statements that we have today, which is setting high expectations and achieving excellence and preparing our students for their tomorrow, are a direct result of that work. Those are the things that I strive for every day in my interactions at work.
Ms. Christie, our board is dependent upon the county commission to fund the budget. How would you propose to gain their support of the budget, and how would you involve them in the budget development?
Thank you, Mr. Cody. County commission is a very important part to funding our school system and to making sure that we take care of taxpayer dollars and use them appropriately. I would build a relationship with them by attending and being part of their meetings, especially when budget amendments from the board has to go through. I would work with them and our finance director to develop a budget in a timely manner. Part of that process would be getting with department heads and school principals and assistant principals. And later tonight, after the meeting's over, I will pass out a form to you that I'd like to use in that planning, where the principals and assistant principals list their utilities, their personnel needs for the upcoming year, their facility and renovation needs for the upcoming year, and we're able to look at all 5 of our buildings and prioritize spending needs. I think with county commission, they also want what is best for our students. And I think if we build a relationship with them, if we show them not only our needs, but our strengths and the great things that we're doing in our school, then they will help us and be committed to developing a budget and funding it.
Thank you.
Kristi, can you explain what you have done to build and maintain a good relationship with your board?
Thank you, Ms. Melissa. I would say not all of you, but most of you, I've had the opportunity to meet with you outside of the meeting, whether it be informally, through text message, or emails. And I hope through each of those interactions and meetings that I have been transparent with you, helped you find or assist you in the right getting you to the right person to get the information that you needed. Truly, I hope that my past actions better represent the answer to this question than my words.
Tell us 3 curricular or instructional improvements that occurred as a result of your leadership. What evidence do you have that they were improvements?
So there are 3 things that I would say that are directly contributed to my leadership and work within the system. The first one I would say would be scheduling. I brought in one of my initial years of the system, I brought in Robert Lee Kennedy, who wrote the book Elementary and Middle School Scheduling. And he was able to assist us with developing schedules for our elementary schools that included a common planning time for teachers. And to this day, we are still using that model so that teachers can plan, they can have their RTI meetings, and that directly impacts the instruction that's occurring in the classroom. So scheduling has definitely been one. The second instruction that I have done is the reading initiative. I've talked about that previously tonight, but with reading initiative, we really focused on our K-2 literacy and the foundation for that literacy for all of our students. We know if that foundation is not into place, then other grades are not going to be successful and our students aren't going to be successful. It came with challenges. One of the changes with the K-2 reading initiative was the workshop. And workshop was where we pulled small groups of kids together and instructed them on their ability level. That has been very successful, and the reason I know that is that teachers requested that when we were no longer doing it, when we voted for a new curriculum. In addition to that, we also saw tremendous gains on our standardized test, and we're accelerating at a faster pace than the other counties in the Upper Cumberland. The last initiative that I have done that has directly impacted instruction would be implementation of our instructional coaching model. We followed and mimicked the work of Jim Knight, and we have an instructional coach in each of our 4 elementary schools. This provides just-in-time support for our teachers, which many times our teachers are hired after the start of school. So this provides a time during the day that they can access them. Our instructional coaches also provide after-school training. We, each year, send out a survey to our teachers about the effectiveness of the instructional coaching program. And through those surveys and through the testaments of our principals and assistant principals, we couldn't do without our instructional coaches and the great job that they do.
Ms. Christie, how can you bring together a diverse, talented group of individuals to form an effective team?
I spoke about this earlier today, Miss Kathy, but I'm glad I got asked this again. You know, when you look at national championship teams or any championship team, you see diverse people. And it's not one individual that makes the team. It's all the individuals, whether you stepped out on the court during the big dance or whether you were just on the practice squad. I recognize strengths in other people, and I surround myself with people who have strengths that complement my weaknesses. So I think as long as we are united in a common goal and have the same focus, that our team will be effective.
Ms. Christie, give some specific examples of things you have done as an administrator that you think significantly contributed to making your faculty or staff a team.
During the course of the year, I try to be consistent and transparent in my actions. I also try to be a team player and to seek out my other colleagues for input on important decisions. This year, I've implemented principal PLCs. I've also, at the beginning of the year, tried to set a good note with our principals and assistant principals with a luncheon prior to school so that we could start off on a good note and really look at the things we wanted to focus on and be encouraging.
Ms. Christie, we expect our Director of Schools to be active and involved with York Institute and the local private schools. How would you go about accomplishing this?
Currently, I would like to continue the things that we have in place with York Institute. I know that we have an MOU in place so that our students and their students can participate on sports teams that either school does not have. I would like to continue including them on the development of the school calendar. But I would also like to see our teachers, especially our middle school teachers, work collaboratively with the high school, both high schools, to have vertical planning meetings as well as shared professional development.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, Ms. Christie, you'd like closing remarks, please?
First and foremost, I want to thank you for considering me for this position. In closing, I would like to share a short story with you. You may recall this story because it was made into a movie called The Great Escape. What makes this story great isn't because it was never done before. Prisoners of war often tried to escape. But what made it great was the sheer scale and scope of the task. It seemed nearly impossible. In 1944, at a Nazi prisoner of war camp, a group of dedicated prisoners were determined to facilitate the escape of more than 250 men in a single night. Their escape plan consisted of digging a very long tunnel from the interior of the camp to the outside of the camp, close to the tree line. The tunnel would need air pumped into it, electricity to light the passage, and a means for the prisoners to dispose of a large amount of dirt. The materials needed by the prisoners were unbelievable. 4,000 bed slats, 1,700 blankets, 1,300 battens, 1,000 feet of electrical wire, and 30 shovels, just to name a few. It is hard to fathom how prisoners of a war camp would be able to secure the needed materials without being caught or noticed. In addition to this, every prisoner that would escape would need civilian clothing, identity cards, maps, and rations. Each person had a job to do, and everyone depended on each other. It took the prisoners over a year before they were ready to attempt their escape. What is so impressive in this story is that each person worked together, focused on a common goal that was worth the risk. The students in Fentress County are worth our best effort every single day. I have built relationships with the people in the system. I have a strong working knowledge of how the system runs, what strengths we possess, and what challenges we face. Every person in our system is important and plays a critical role in educating our students. As I stated earlier, as the director of schools, I will make decisions based on what is best for students. I will be their advocate. I will be their champion. I will consider the voices of the teachers, faculty, and staff that my decisions impact. I will be transparent and accountable for the decisions I make. I will be professional every single day. I will encourage, motivate, and inspire students, teachers, and staff to help move our system forward.
Thank you very much.
I have a packet for everybody.
If you would, board members, everybody bring their little book with them tonight. They look on page 2 and page 3. I need to clarify some things on there for our upcoming meeting. The first one's timeline and critical decision sequence. That's been altered somewhat. We're on the interview candidates 11/8 through 11/22. And what I propose to do tonight, if you look over at the next page, procedures and director of school search process, you'll go down to number 5 on that. And it says at the end of the process, which will be next Monday night, 11/22, each board member will list but not rank his or her top 2 choices on a written and signed ballot. Now, we can do that next Monday night. It'll be advertised, and we can do that next Monday night after our last interview. After the last interview is over with, we'll do this. And it says, and one of the board members mentioned that there's some questions that they'd like to ask, maybe the last 2 candidates, which that is fine because we need to do what the board members want to do. But in number 6, if you'll look at it, ma'am. Well, our timeline is 11/29, Miss Darlene, that we'll announce an appointment. And that night, let me explain to you first. So if we do that next Monday night, then the candidates receiving the most votes may be invited to return for a second interview. What I propose, because we've got to offer a contract up, I talked to the board attorney, Mr. Wright, and he's going to send everybody out a copy of that contract this week. The next couple of days, you'll get a copy of that on your email. So, and the 11/22 meeting, the 11/29 meeting, it'll be a long meeting, but, we can go over the contract, make any adjustments to that contract that we need to make, because we got to know what we're going to offer these folks. Whoever the last 2 is, we need to ask them if they're willing to work for that amount of money or not, or under that contract. I don't know that. That's questions that'll have to be answered at that meeting. But if we're going to stay on the timeline, then we need, after our next Monday night meeting, we need to go ahead and narrow it down to 2 candidates. And then, if the board wishes, we can call those 2 candidates to come back at our 29th meeting, and we can spend 15, 20 minutes questioning them, asking whatever questions we want. They'll leave, then we can get down to business with the contract and with appointing a new director of school.
I would like to leave it the way that we talked about at the last meeting. I think we've had a week in between each candidate so far, and it's unfair to our third candidate to not have a week to talk to our constituents and the community to hear what they have to say.
Well, we can do that, but now on the 11/29th, we've got down, unless you all change it tonight, and announce the appointment. So it's going to be a long meeting.
We had already changed that.
What?
We changed that to December the 6th. We were going to have another meeting to finish this up.
I didn't get that on my minutes. December the 6th. Okay.
Someone had suggested rather than bring them back for questions, but what if we gave them the beginning of the 11/29 meeting to all three candidates come for a last sale pitch, so to speak, on the 11/29 before we got down to narrowing down candidates and discussing them. Now, that's up to the board, but that was what I was asked earlier today if we wanted to offer them. They did that in consideration of the director's position at YAI. And that's the reason that someone asked me today if we were going to do that as well. We go through the interview process. All of them interview. Then the week that we actually sit down, we let each one of them come in and have a moment to address the board before we start narrowing down candidates.
So what are you telling me? Next week will be the 22nd. So from that point, a week from that, it's just an interview. But a week from that, what's the date you said? 11/29. Okay, 11/29. I didn't have that. I'm just looking at all the itinerary we got from TSBA.
Someone asked me if we were going to do that night before we narrowed down candidates. So I'm asking the board if that's something you want to do, or if you wanted to narrow down to two and then have a second round of interviews. That's up to you guys. But
I mean, y'all can do anything you want to do. It's just we need to have some sort of game plan here.
I think our initial plan was to narrow it down to two. And I'm okay with having the candidates have their end of line speech or whatever. I'm fine with that. But I think it should be to two before that. That way we are going to have a week for each one. To be when the two.
We narrow them down on the 29th. That's what we had discussed at the last meeting. That way we have a week for each person.
Each person would have a week. All three can be here on the 29th, where we will announce which two, and then be able to now, is there something else y'all would like to address, or anybody on the board would like to address?
Mr. Chairman, are you still with us? Ed?
Yes. Yes.
We're discussing if we wanted to, on the 29th, have all three candidates come back in which to address the board, and then we narrow down from there, or whether we wanted to go ahead and narrow down to two at the beginning of the 29th, and then have those two address the board, and board have any additional questions or anything answered that night. What is your opinion on that, Mr. Chairman?
My opinion would be we stick to the game plan. We narrow it down to two, and we bring those two back for some discussion, because each candidate had their chance at the end of the interview to speak what they wanted to put forward to us. I don't know how much more they could add to that. I think we should narrow it down to two on the 29th. Like they said, we ought to give that the third candidate that week, and then let's come back on the 29th, narrow it down to two, and have those two to for discussion or whatever, and then appoint a chairman. Appoint a director. That's my opinion, but now I'm only one vote.
Board?
I agree.
Do we need to do a roll call or anything? I mean, it's not a motion, but do we need to do that for this, or?
I mean, it was already.
It was already set that way, was it not?
If we're not changing
Yeah.
anything, we don't
Already
have.
set.
I think would be fine. Leave it like it is.
I think the question is, do we need to ask all three candidates to be here on the 29th? For any reason?
Well, the only reason that I can see to do that is at what time frame are we to let the decision of the two be known?
My understanding was with TSBA, we had the option to change this and defer this out as long as we felt needed. Now, I thought we were discussing on the 29th and discussing contract, narrowing down, and we were supposed to decide who we were offering that contract to, and they were to accept or decline by the 6th of December. So then we could announce. And if they declined, then we were to announce that we were offering to whoever else.
Okay, so like by 8 a.m.
Mr. Chairman.
Second, we're going to say who the two are.
I think the chairman wants to address this.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with what she says there. I think we should, as a board, meet, narrow it down to the two, and then let's discuss what we want to do, and then offer them. I didn't know about the 6th. I thought we was going to do it all on the 29th, but I feel like we need to discuss what all we need to do to appoint a director with the contract and everything. We need to do all that on the 29th. In my opinion, we should have put this contract out before we started all this. But now that's in hindsight.
Agreed.
I mean, we should have had this dollar figure out there so these people that is applying for this job knew what they was applying for. But now where we're at this point, I think we should meet in the 29th, narrow it down to two, invite them back to the 6th, and we'll, as a board, discuss this contract amount and have it ready to hand out on the 29th. Come back on the 6th or whatever day you all choose to do so, and then we'll appoint a director. I didn't mean to interrupt. No,
you didn't interrupt.
That's my thought process. I'm sorry to all of y'all to have to do all this work without me being there, but COVID just won't seem to let up. So I will, if nothing changes, be there next Monday night.
That's okay. We just want you better, Eddie.
All righty. Me too. Thank y'all.
We're set.
All right. Thank y'all.
For next week. Let's just go and play next week.
Does everybody understand what's going on?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So what I'm getting, we'll continue with the interview the 22nd as we had scheduled.
We will.
On the 29th, we're going to lower it down to two candidates, discuss the contract, and then we will appoint on the 6th. However, if they accept the contract.
The December the 6th, I didn't have that date, so that's what I was trying to stay within the timeline of the decision. Is that all?
At what point in time are we going to get together and decide? To two.
The 29th.
Then we vote.
All right. Got it.
All right. Any other business? I make a motion to adjourn?
Oh, yeah.
Second?
Yep.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We adjourn.